Okay, welcome to the Boston Festival of New Jewish Music. Welcome to our final concert of this season. This is our third season, which is an absolute miracle as far as I'm concerned. And it is such a joy to be here with you tonight. If you don't know me, my name is Nat Seelen. I'm our artistic director. And you can clap. That's great. Thank you. My job right now is to tell you three things. Thing number one, fire exits. You came in over there. In case of emergency, you can run that way. Also, the signs say exit here. You can exit through the patio, the back door, and the gate does open from the inside. We haven't had to use it yet. Now you know. Thing number two. Cell phones are awesome. If you want to take pictures of us or videos, we're totally happy for that. However, turn your volume off. It's so much fun to be on stage and have someone's phone ring. Said no one ever. So do that first, please. The third thing is to tell you that this concert series is free, which is awesome. We really value making it possible for literally anyone who wants to come to one of these concerts to get over here and get in the door. They're definitely not free to produce. So if you've got $5 and you're like, this music is worth $5, no more, you can drop it in the donation bins in the back. If you have $50 and you're like, 10 for each, that's reasonable. Drop it in the bucket. If you have $50,000 and you just like hit it really, really big on, I don't know, maybe you invested in NVIDIA 10 years ago because you liked the name and you have no idea what to do with it because you already own a house in Boston. We would love to take your money. And we would love to do amazing things with it. And we would love to put on incredible concerts every month here in Boston, featuring amazing musicians from the Boston area doing new things from our culture that you've never heard before. And if you have $50,000, do not put it in the bucket. Come talk to me. For real. But I'd love to talk to you. We've never done a fundraiser before. This is our third season. We've never done a proper fundraiser. And each season we've ended up in the black from the generosity of our audiences and some really wonderful grant funders. We're probably going to do a fundraiser soon. So if you have $50,000 and you have friends who have $50,000 and their friends have $50,000, call me. I'd love to talk. Okay, those are my three things. It is my incredible pleasure to introduce this amazing band, Ezekiel's Wheels Klezmer Band, and our amazing special guest, Dr. Jonathan Cannon. Clap your hands for him. For those of you who don't know John, John is a founding member of Ezekiel's Wheels Klezmer Band and also one of my really dear friends. We've been playing music together since we were children. At 18 years old, I found myself in his dorm room talking about Richard Feynman's autobiography and playing Mike Portnoy's interactive drum set website before there were apps. And here we are now, and it's such a pleasure to introduce John to come tell us about what is going in our brains when music comes in our ears. So I think we're going to play a piece first that we've all been playing together for a long time. And then John's going to talk, and we're going to give you new music and neuroscience and some special guesting. So first things first, let's play some Klezmer.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Switch hats. So, there we go. Yep. Oh.
Whoa.
All right.
2 years of planning.
So I just drove in from Canada on Saturday. I work at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. And when I told Nat I am coming back to Boston for a visit, bless his heart, he told me we need to get a neuroscience and Klezmer talk. And I was so excited about this. A real goal of mine is to start taking this research, which I'm very excited about, and turning it into something that real, regular, wonderful people like you can get excited about and learn about. I study rhythm in the brain, and rather than trying to give you a talk on my research in particular, I kind of want to give a little survey of the field. And so I'm calling this the brain, the body, and the beat. And I'm focusing on what we do know and what we don't know. And thank you so much, again, to Nat and the Festival of New Jewish Music for getting this together and giving me this wonderful opportunity. What is a beat? Well, it's an experience. It's the experience of a pulse of some kind while listening to a rhythm. A lot of people like to say that it is where you would tap your finger or would step with your feet if you were tapping or stepping. This in itself is a pretty confusing way to define anything, where you would do something. Let's see, I'll do this one myself, but then I'm gonna have the band at some point come in and do some live stimuli for us. But this one is just, try stomping your feet with the beat. Yeah. So here's that steady beat, that tap with the feet. Some basic things you'll notice. Not every clap sound is a beat. Not every beat has a sound attached to it. And so here, dup, bup, 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 stomp. You hear the pulse there, but there's no actual sound signaling it. And I'll emphasize again, it's not a property of the rhythm. The beat is a property of our experience of the rhythm. And that's why it's so interesting to focus on the beat in particular as an aspect of rhythm and start looking at the brain and start looking at what are the components of our experience of the beat. So for starters, just from psychophysics, from psychology, people have discovered that the presence of the experience of a beat shapes our perception. So we are able to make very temporally precise predictions of the times that certain sounds will happen because we've got a sense of the beat. It also sharpens our attention in a periodic way. So we're able to detect faint sounds or slightly altered sounds better on the beat than off the beat. So something in there is happening that's shaping our experience of the sound. Going straight to the brain, what does a beat look like in the brain? Well, to answer that question, a really important experiment back from 2007, continued to 2008, put together a set of experimental stimuli that people would listen to in an fMRI scanner. Can we get a musician or two? All right, we're just playing a D for this one. But first we've got the metric symbol stimulus, something that is strongly beat-based and really conveys a sense of the beat. They had a collection of rhythms like this. Go ahead.
The 3-2?
Yeah, repeat 3 times. The first line, just the first line. 1, 2, 3. Then they had a set of metric complex, which are things where you could tap your beat, or you could tap your feet to the beat, but they don't really tell you where the beat is in a very clear and unambiguous way. So let's try that second line. 3 times. 1, 2, 3. 1, ready, go. practice, but you get the idea. And then there was a set of non-metric rhythms, and out of mercy for the musicians, I'm not going to have them try to play these where the ratios of the notes to each other are irrational numbers, and so completely meterless. And so what do they find? Well, the fMRI shows you where there's the most, I mean, it's really measuring the blood flow to different areas of the brain. And so they tried to find this brain topography of rhythm. And when people were listening to rhythm, they had these 5 different areas that lit up more than when they were not listening. I'll just rattle them off. Cerebellum, the superior temporal gyrus, which is an auditory processing region, and then the basal ganglia, the supplementary motor area, and the premotor cortex. All of these, cerebellum to a certain extent, but all these 3 areas are areas that are associated with movement. They're all areas that are associated with either motor planning, motor execution. And then when you looked at the beat-based rhythms, the metric simple ones in particular, you'd see these 3 other areas that were more active when there was a strong sense of the beat than when there wasn't. And that was the supplementary motor area, the basal ganglia, and the superior temporal gyrus. So one auditory area, and then this pair of regions, the basal ganglia and the supplementary motor area, which were both very strongly associated with movement. If we grab another paper, which actually looked at how people coordinate complex rhythmic movements. So if they're trying to move their body in a complex rhythmic way, you see these areas lighting up here. Let's see, do we got a pointer here or no? Yeah. Look at that, supplementary motor area, premotor cortex, which we saw over here, the basal ganglia, the cerebellum, and then the primary motor cortex, which is really motor output. That's like are actually moving our bodies. But all of these at different areas, the basal ganglia, the premotor cortex, the supplementary motor area, the cerebellum, all were basically the same network that was lighting up when we were just listening. So there's this striking overlap between rhythmic movement in the brain and hearing something with a beat. And so the question, of course, is what's going on in there? And one idea that's been put forward, which I really got inspired by, excited by, and seized on, is that we're simulating rhythmic actions in some way in order to keep the beat. But what does that actually mean? What does simulate mean? We're not necessarily imagining moving, right? It's not motor imagery per se. There's something happening in there that is movement-like, that is allowing us to keep steady time, and maybe even is related to whatever it is that makes us want to move. So this has been discussed in papers a few times, but is still this open idea that we're trying to dig into. Now, if this is the case, then you would think that these simulated actions are actually going to be an important part of perceiving the beat. They're going to be causally related in some way. These motor areas are not just lighting up because we feel like we want to move. They're lighting up because they're doing something important to that whole beat percept. So the first question is supplementary motor area important for beat perception? Recently, a few people have tried to either manipulate it or weaken it in some way, in a reversible way, to see whether it shapes people's beat perception. Transcranial magnetic stimulation, zapping it with magnetic pulses, has no effect on reproduction of rhythm with the beat. So if you hear a beat, you're trying to repeat the rhythm, zapping SMA doesn't seem to make much of a difference. Zapping it with current, direct current, with electrodes on the head. People did that and tried to figure out whether it affected your judgment of whether sounds are on or off the beat. Didn't actually seem to work, although hitting another auditory area did seem to have an effect. So as yet, we're 2 for 2. It doesn't really seem to be that important. However, recent results suggested that by stimulating the supplementary motor area electrically, it seems to increase our urge to move and increase our pleasure in songs with movement-inducing rhythms. So here we've got this evidence that supplementary motor area may not be important for timekeeping per se, may not be important for keeping the beat, but is in some way related to our desire to move. Over to the basal ganglia, this deep brain nuclei that also lit up with beat-based rhythms. Well, one way to study it is to look at Parkinson's disease, which is a condition in which the basal ganglia and dopaminergic signaling through the basal ganglia is very weak. When people had controls and people with Parkinson's disease trying to discriminate between slightly different rhythms, Everyone did it a little bit better when those rhythms had a strong beat. That just seems to be something that we were able to do better when we experience a beat. But Parkinsonian patients were specifically bad at that. They underperformed controls for rhythms that had a strong beat. So they didn't seem to get that beat-based advantage nearly to the same degree. You can see here, these are the metrically simple for the controls and metrically complex. They did much better with the beat. And with Parkinson's disease, there was very little difference between their performance on metric complex and metric simple rhythms. So that suggests that actually the experience of a beat, and in some way not just the urge to move, but actually what we're able to do perceptually because of a beat, is shaped by basal ganglia causally. And then there's these observational studies where they're saying, well, what does activate basal ganglia in particular about these rhythms? Let's try these ones. So first they played this very simple metronome-like rhythm with an accent. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they played another rhythm without the accent. Ready, go. And as it turned out, the basal ganglia were more active when less structure was provided for that second set of rhythms, suggesting that they're involved in creating structure for us, because we still perceive that as something that has structure, has a meter, there's 4 beats, dum, dum, bum, bum, bum. You kind of create some of that accent for yourself. And so the takeaway here, at least for the basal ganglia, is that they may actually be important for creating a sense of rhythmic structure. So overall, from this section of the talk, what I want you to chew on is that we seem to use the same motor-associated parts of our brain just to hear a beat that we do to move rhythmically. That we may be simulating actions in some way. That's an idea that's getting tossed around in this field. The supplementary motor area seems to be involved in making us want to move, though it may not actually be involved in shaping our perception and giving us that experience of a beat that I was mentioning at the beginning. But that the basal ganglia, this deep brain nucleus that's involved in selecting actions and executing actions with our bodies, may actually be really important for giving us a sense of rhythmic structure and a sense of the beat. So after this, once we've played some more music, I'm going to go into some more perceptual results and relate movement and perception of a beat in as many concrete ways as I can, so we can start to see those links between our control of our bodies and our perception of a beat and rhythm. Switch hats.
Check, 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 check. That's not on. Is it on? Is my mic on? No. That was a world premiere of that. We just put that together for this concert here. So we have a lot of new rep.
Yeah, so we like to use this concert. This is our third time also playing this concert in this series. Once for each year. And we like to use it as a way to kind of workshop a bunch of new stuff to see sort of how it lands, and it really nicely ties into music in the brain, because it's like, what do you think about it? All of these new arrangements. So yeah, that was our debut of our new overture. Yeah. And we're going to go on to one that we've kind of been workshopping really since last year. The last time I think we performed it was last year at this concert, where we were trying to pull in a lot more. We were kind of mining like the new Klezmer archives. Do you want to talk a little bit about that project? But
Yes.
if you have a microphone.
Yeah. If you're around the klezmer scene, you know that. Is my mic on? Okay. It's just kind of quiet, but that's okay.
Set to background vocals.
You've set to background vocals, of course, yes. That several years ago, a bunch of tunes that were hidden in a library, not hidden, but we knew they were there, but we couldn't get access to them. A bunch of klezmer tunes were in a library in Kyiv, and finally, there was a woman was able to go in there and take pictures of all of these tunes, around 1,000 new tunes that hadn't been seen or played in hundreds of years, and suddenly they were all online, and I'm still looking through all of them because there's just so much treasures in there. And so both of these, we put two tunes together, a vocal tune and an instrumental, to create this piece, which is Deine schwarze Augen, which is your dark eyes.
And I'd like to give a special shout out to Jonah up here in the front for helping with the Yiddish. I don't know if you remember helping with the Yiddish, but about a year ago, a little over a year ago, Jonah helped me a lot with the Yiddish, because basically in this archive, when it was found, there was just one verse of Yiddish vocals, and some of the words were kind of hard to read because everything is just handwritten and then scanned. So there were several words in that verse that didn't really scan well. So I sort of started filling those in, and then thought, okay, well, one verse isn't really enough to make a song. So then ended up composing, with the help of Jonah, 2 other verses to go along with it. And so it's a very dramatic love song, all about, your dark eyes, how they blind me, but how I cannot have you.
Zwei schwarze Augen, sie haben mich den ganzen Gott verblendet. Daher bist du bei mir wie mein Leben, ob nerven kann ich nie. aber willst mich keinmal nicht lieben.
So neuroscience is great. It gets people to show up for talks. It's a very exciting and hot topic right now. But if you ask a serious neuroscientist, they'll often tell you, once you get them far enough into conversation, that what's really interesting is behavior, right? What's really interesting is understanding the things that animals and people do. And then once you understand those well enough, you can start to dig into the brain mechanisms and things like that. But ultimately, the thing that makes me most excited about this whole field is just how fascinating the real interactions between beat perception and movement are. Aside from using the same brain areas and these brain areas seeming to be doing important things, so what I want to do with this section of the talk, the longest third of my talk, is first talk about how beat perception affects movement, and then about how movement affects beat perception. And focusing in on not the brain aspects, but really just what the behavior and the perception is doing. So first of all, people are familiar with the idea that we unintentionally or involuntarily synchronize. So when we hear ongoing rhythms that have a beat, they influence our rhythmic actions, and they tend to fall into sync. This has been verified in lots of different settings. It's actually a hard thing to do experiments on, because if people are trying not to synchronize, they won't. And if they're trying to synchronize, they will. So you need to find some way to get them to do something in between. Often that involves trying to do some other task while walking or running. In one case, jogging. In one case, self-paced oscillatory movements. I think they were moving their hand back and forth or something. And once we have the sense of a beat, we also have this urge to move. This has been studied under the name groove. People are now working on plum, pleasurable urge to move, trying to rebrand groove, which has its own whole cultural connotations. But groove seems to be closely associated with syncopation, at least in our culture. In particular, rhythms with events off the beat, not marking every beat with events, but also with enough on-beat events to give the sense of a beat clearly. So there's this balance. And over here on this graph, you can see a whole bunch of different individuals who were played a lot of different rhythms and asked how much they wanted to move. On the x-axis here is the degree of syncopation, how off the beat, how far from a metronome and close to jumbled nonsense this rhythm was. And on average, people tended to peak right in this intermediate level of syncopation. So let me give you a couple of klezmer examples. Go ahead, and I'm going to conduct you in to play 3 times through the first line with bass and treble. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's fun, but it kind of doesn't make you pick up your feet.
It sounds like a musical.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. All right. I'm just tweaking one thing here in this rhythm. We're going to move Abigale off the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so that makes you pick up your feet. That's a good degree of syncopation. Now we're going to remove Kirsten and see what happens if you don't get the sense of a beat in the first place. Go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you imagine it, if you really work at it, you can fill Kirsten back in and you can find that sense of the beat, and then all of a sudden you want to lift your feet. But there does seem to be this balance, this balancing act, where we put as many things off the beat and leave as many beats unmarked as we can while still giving you a strong sense of the beat. And that seems to be what communicates this urge to move. if you look in Parkinsonian patients again, going over to this really interesting interaction between the basal ganglia and the beat, people recently studied the urge to move in people with Parkinson's disease. And as it turns out, medium syncopation does not motivate movement in people with these impaired basal ganglia, with people with Parkinson's disease. So you can see in advanced Parkinson's, the high complexity rhythms, which are too far out there to really give you a sense of movement, are actually on the same level as the medium complexity rhythms, the medium syncopation rhythms. Whereas the low complexity rhythms were the most motivating of movement for people with Parkinson's disease. Speaking of Parkinson's, rhythmic auditory stimulation, often with either a metronome or music, can make it much easier for people with Parkinson's to walk, as well as people with stroke. There's this incredible link between beat perception and movement here, where perceiving a beat can create movement where otherwise movement was very difficult. So this is, here, you may not be able to hear this very well, but here we go. Somebody with Parkinson's having a lot of trouble initiating steps and moving smoothly, but one thing you'll notice about this music is it's got a very strong sense of a beat and has the power to motivate movement where movement wasn't even possible. Another disorder in which there's a very similar effect is actually stuttering. So people who stutter have a lot of trouble initiating certain movements, speech movements in particular. It also does seem to involve the basal ganglia, the same brain nuclei that are affected by Parkinson's disease. And many stutterers find that they can speak more fluently along with a metronome. And in fact, this is one way of rehabilitating speech, of helping people overcome stutters, is speaking along with a metronome. And so this is another case in which this sense of this underlying pulse makes movement possible. This one was done at McMaster University, my university, by a friend of mine. Oh, it is? Oh, thank you. That should be plugged in. Good catch. And this was only made possible by this incredible facility we have at McMaster called the Live Lab, where you're able to track movement on a whole crowd of people while they listen to music or enjoy a live concert in a full concert setting. And what they did is they turned on and off these bass speakers, which nobody could actually consciously detect. They were these state-of-the-art speakers where nobody could tell you when they were asked whether the bass was on or off. And yet, during this electronic dance music concert, people moved more when the bass was on. So there was this mysterious movement motivating effect, not just of the beat, but of bass in particular. Kind of validates the bass players among us.
I know.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell me.
People don't know why this works yet, and they're starting to dig into it now. But this may be mediated by the vestibular system. Our sense of balance is controlled partially by this inner ear organ, and then mediated by brain circuits. And the vestibular system, being located in our ear and full of fluid, also picks up bass frequencies. And so it may be that even though we can't consciously detect the sound of the bass, we're still getting hit by it by our very sense of balance, which may actually play a really important role in beat perception. We'll get back to the vestibular system in a sec. That urge to move along with music can be measured in another way, aside from just asking people whether they want to move or not, which is only somewhat valid. It turns out that if you try to stand still, you literally can't. In particular, when you're listening to something that has that groove, that has that movement-inducing effect. So these three different papers are all people trying to stand still, but producing these microscopic movements as they listen to rhythm. Dan Cameron, the one who ran the last experiment, and I have been talking about trying to do this in the Live Lab and having a stand-still competition in order to then study the specific aspects of syncopated rhythms that make people incapable of not moving, which would be entertaining, and also may be mediated by the vestibular system, which of course is what's controlling our sense of balance. So if the sense of the beat is or the bass is hitting our vestibular system directly, this may be what is putting us off balance when we get that urge to move. So then flipping the question on its head, how does movement affect beat perception? So these were all different ways where sensing a beat affected your movement, caused you to synchronize, caused you to be able to move when you couldn't before. But moving also affects our perception. Some of this work was also done at McMaster. But it turns out that head movement influences our perceived beat or meter. When babies were bounced in different ways along with the same rhythm, they would then, and don't ask exactly how we measured where the babies were able to hear a beat, but they would respond differently depending on whether they were bounced on every third note or every second note, in a way that suggested that they were now able to, they were predisposed to hear the beat wherever they were bounced. I'll actually get to the development of beat perception and how that may be important in the learning of beat perception in the last section of the talk. As a follow-up, they had adults bounce themselves along with certain rhythms, along with these ambiguous rhythmic stimuli. And they also tended to hear the beats aligned with wherever they bounced. And then they decided to just directly stimulate the vestibular system. So they got these little electrodes you put on the back of your neck that can directly induce stimulation to the vestibular system that controls our sense of balance. And by directly stimulating the vestibular system along with a particular beat, that became where people heard the beat in this ambiguous rhythm. So it really does seem like the vestibular system is really important to our beat perception. Moving along, and this is something musicians are very familiar with, and perhaps it didn't need an experiment to show, but Mike Schutz here is a professional percussionist and percussion teacher, so he knew what he was doing when he launched this experiment. He had people listen to a metronomic stimulus, a steady stimulus, which then cut out for a certain amount of time, and then they were asked whether a later event was on time with the metronome or not. So I'm going to have you guys play this one. Maybe just Abigale. Seems adequate. Dun, 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 dun. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Okay. So that was perfect because that last. Who thinks that last event was early? Who thinks it was late? Who thinks it was right on time? So to my ear, that was a little early.
It was early.
Yeah, but actually, if you tried to move along with it, I'll bet you would be more on point as well.
It's not what I expected.
Yeah. All right. So try tapping along with it this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Move your hand, move your foot. Here we go. Yeah, perfect. So it helps the player keep time, and it helps the listener keep time. And by moving along, people were much more accurate in judging whether the last event was slightly early or slightly late. Moving along also helps support rhythmic attention, and this is going to be the most enjoyable sight read of them all, because this was a really creative experiment. So the goal is to listen to the metronome at the beginning, the steady beat, which will be given by 4 events, and then listen to the events that are on the beat but not the events that are off the beat. And with the ones that are on the beat, you're supposed to judge whether they were higher or lower than those first 4 tones on average. So it's a tricky experiment. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. All right, who thinks that on average the ones on the beat were higher than the first 4 notes? Who thinks they were lower? So as it turns out, this is a tricky but doable experiment, a doable task. And when people moved their hands or moved their feet, I forget which one they did, when they moved along with this, with the beat, they were more able to attend to those on the beat notes and then more able to make that judgment accurately. So moving along not only supports accurate timing judgments, but supports our rhythmic attention. But why? So this is something that I've put a lot of thought into as sort of a launching point of my research. Does the process of creating a rhythmic movement sharpen our timed attention and the precision of our timing judgments? Or does the sensory input that we get from our own movement entrain our sense of a beat, which then does the things I described before. It helps you make these accurate timing judgments and sharpens your attention on the beat. Well, the fact that bouncing a baby, the babies didn't have to bounce themselves. They weren't creating movement. They were just getting moved. And that shaped where they heard a beat. So that data in particular suggests that maybe it's just what we experience when we move, the feedback we get from our movement, the sounds that we make and the joint feelings that we get that make movement affect our sense of a beat. My own thoughts are that our bodies are constantly providing us with a sense of a beat. We get a beat percept when we're jogging. You can suddenly get a song stuck in your head with your own footsteps. As it turns out, when people stutter, not only can they speak along with a metronome, but if whenever they make a syllable, they hear a click as a result, that works just as well. And so creating your own metronome turns out to work just as well. Similarly, in Parkinson's disease, people who can walk along with a metronome also find that they can walk along whenever they just hear their own footsteps clearly enough. So our own bodies can create a sense of the beat. I already did that one. And that self-generated metronome may be allowing us to attend to and predict the results of our own rhythmic actions. This is a slightly out in left field thought, but I've been entertaining it for a little while, that maybe actually what our sense of a beat is doing for us evolutionarily is telling us when our foot is going to hit the ground when we're walking. If we develop that sense of a beat, we're able to attend to the feedback that we get from our own steps very carefully, make very accurate predictions as to where our foot is going to hit the ground, and then be able to detect small irregularities, detect what is it that we stepped on, detect did we just go down off of a very low step. And so this leads to some experiments, and this will wrap up this portion of the presentation. But I've been toying around with this setup in which you can make it sound like a single finger tap or a single footstep happened a little bit later than it actually did. So you'll be tapping on a pad and hearing click, 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 and then one of them is slightly late. And I've been studying the effect on the ongoing tapping and or footsteps to find out whether we're spontaneously synchronizing to the beat that we're generating ourselves. Preliminary data suggests that whenever you get delayed auditory feedback from your own rhythmic actions, it causes you to delay the next action, as if you were dancing along with the rhythm that you were creating by walking. So the experiments are in progress, but I've got a bit of a collaboration hopefully worked out with some people who have a treadmill and are able to sonify footsteps, and we're going to be looking at that question. I'd like to call the rest of the band back up for some more beat-based music. And I'll mention now, in case I forget next time, it is such a delight to get to play with these guys again. I'm so happy to be back.
The delight.
And you know, I got to move to Hamilton for this really cool job and this really cool research, but I really miss this.
The delight is ours.
For real.
So we're going to play a couple tunes in this little set that entirely have John with us. And these are some favorites that are oldies, goodies. Yeah. This first one, we're going to be doing a Yiddish love song that, similarly to the last one that we sang, there was just one verse to it until John actually decided to take a stab at writing a second verse. So that was a whole other Yiddish experiment.
I needed a lot of help ironing out the ugly bits.
Yeah, but I think it came out nicely. This is Shane Vidi Lavona, Beautiful as the Moon. Shane Vidi Lavona, lichtig wie die Stern von Himmel Matone, bist du mir zugeschickt. Mein Glück hab ich gewinnen, wenn ich hab dich gefunden. Du scheinst wie 1000 Sinnen, hast du mein Herz beglückt. Deine Zähne lach, weiße Perlach, mit deinem
Kischef wie der Wind, der Sonnengold ist verborgen, wenn du bist nicht bei mir. Dein Geen hat mich gehalten, wenn ich hab dich getroffen. Ob du wirst in mir bleiben, wird das Leben seine Schier. Deine Zähne lach, weiße Perlach, mit deinen schönen Augen, deine Hände lach, deine Haare lach, hast mich sie gezeigt, schön wie die Levin, richtig wie der Stern von Himmel am Matine, bist du mir
So to wrap up this talk, this is like one of these biathlons. What do? You shoot and then ski and then shoot again or something like that. It's, play, speak. The role that learning plays in all of this is a mystery that I find particularly compelling and interesting. So I'm formulating it at this point is beat perception innate or learned? And those are kind of outdated categories. Like nothing's really innate, nothing's really entirely learned. We all have predispositions, but like where is the balance between innateness and learning here? Now newborns who have been rigged up with these adorable EEG sets have been shown to detect a beat in music. I'm going to need my band's help with this. And okay, so we're just going to play the top line. And this is going to be one of the things that the newborn might have listened to. And you'll notice that something is slightly irregular in this. One note gets left out in the second measure. 1, 2, ready, go.
Want to do it with line? Oh, just
no, sorry.
the top
bass
system.
and treble together. Top system. Sorry, top system.
Okay.
1, 2, ready, go. So you heard that there was a little missing bit there, and they recorded the infant's brain activity to see how surprised were they. Loosely speaking. Let's try another one. In this case, we're going to skip a slightly different note. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so there, the missing note was on the beat. As it turned out, the infants seemed to have a stronger brain response to missing pieces of the pattern that were on the beat rather than off the beat, suggesting that newborns, right out of the womb, were already had some kind of sense of a beat that was similar to ours. Fascinatingly, and this is brand new data, as yet unpublished, and the fellow who sent me this said to take it all with a grain of salt, but it seems like newborns already like medium amounts of syncopation. So you can see here that across 2 different experiments, white and dark colored, we saw that the amount of movement that the infants did in response to the beat went up when there were medium amounts of syncopation as opposed to low syncopation. And then as the infants got older, and this is across a population of infants ranging from around 200 days to around 600 days old, the amount of syncopation they liked seemed to actually drop off. So they started really appreciating syncopation and moving along with it, and then the older the infants got, the more they liked very, very simple rhythms, which kind of throws a wrench into this idea that nursery rhymes and baby songs should be very simple. If you really want your baby to dance, you need to play them something with some funk, some syncopation. So all of that makes it seem pretty innate. But then where the interesting part really comes in is looking at what parts of beat perception are acquired by learning. And in particular, there's this thing called an odd meter. So in music, very generally, in even meters and more familiar music, we hear everything in groups of 2 or in groups of 3, one or the other. And so groups of 2, you'll hear bump, 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 bump. In groups of 3, bump, 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 bump. But in odd meters, those things are sequenced with each other. So you'll have some groups of 2, some groups of 3. Bump, 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 bump. And these are more familiar to some cultures of music than others. So I'm going to have my band again play 2 experimental stimuli. These were used in a paper. And my citation practices are terrible here. This was Aaron Hannon, and the paper I failed to cite earlier was Benjamin Morion and his group. I will fix these slides before posting them anywhere. So they used the same melody, but they set it in either an even meter, sort of this more familiar meter, or an odd meter, this the meter that's more familiar to people who are listen to a lot of Bulgarian and Macedonian music, but are not familiar to most North American listeners. So conducting into the simple meter, 1 and 2, 3. So dum, bum, bum, bum. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dum. They played this for people, and they also played a very similar melody, but it was set in 7. So dun, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And what they would do is they would slightly lengthen one of the notes in the melody, and say how similar did that seem to the original version. And then they would also do other perturbations to it that kept the meter, that weren't lengthening or shortening, but were like splitting a note in 2 or something like that. And so they collected these dissimilarity ratings when they said if you tweaked it by lengthening a note slightly, how dissimilar did they say it was when it was altered to violate the meter, when one of the notes got longer or shorter. And this was a measure of how basically how strongly did they feel this rhythmic structure, this meter, to the point that they were then able to recognize these slight violations of that metrical structure. And for North American adults with a simple meter, when they lengthened a note, they were like, ooh, that sounds really different. But when they were playing it in a complex meter, they really didn't hear much of a difference when one of the notes was lengthened or shortened. Bulgarian and Macedonian adults, sorry, I'm giving it away. Bulgarian and Macedonian adults really did hear quite a difference when one of these notes was lengthened or shortened, even in the complex meter, showing that they're more familiar with this metrical structure and are more able to recognize these slight violations. And infants, North American infants, now they measured how long the infants spent looking at the source of the music, which was this measure of how surprised were the infants. Again, we're always just doing these infant experiments to see how surprised are these poor little babies. And as it turns out, North American infants were significantly more surprised by the meter-violating alterations, the lengthened or shortened notes, even in the complex meter, suggesting that, in fact, odd and complex meters, not only are they learned? Well, it seems like they may be lost through unlearning. It seems like babies may actually be attuned to these complex meters and then learn the limitations of their culture, and learn not to hear certain things over the course of exposure to different types of music. So to wrap up this presentation, I want to just point towards an upcoming project that I'm going to be setting first some undergrads on, and then hopefully bringing on board some graduate students to work on this. It's to do an odd meter intervention, to force North American listeners to take in odd metered rhythms, either through tapping along with them and tapping in the correct pattern, or just by listening to them. And then looking at rhythm perception and synchronization abilities before and after the intervention to make sure we've actually affected them in some way and successfully forced them to anticipate and follow and understand these odd meter time signatures. And then do before and after fMRI scans and see, wait a moment, so are you hearing a beat now? And if you are, if after this intervention you're now able to take in this odd rhythm and really hear a beat in it, do we actually see this beat-related brain activity change with training? Which will start to dig into all these different aspects of beat perception and try to understand, do the brain areas that are lighting up with beat perception, are those sensitive to even meters in particular, or are they really just sensitive to any kind of structure that you're familiar with, any of the odd beat structures as well? This is some upcoming research that I'm hopefully going to get moving over the next year. And it was really my experience with this kind of music and with this band that led me to think down these paths, to think, well, you know, we play things that aren't perfectly evenly subdivided. We play things that are in odd meters or have patterns that are irregular, like a horror rhythm, bum, 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 that are not, easy, steady beats. But how does this interact with our regular beat perception? Are we perceiving exactly the same type of beat? And are our bodies getting involved in the same way once we've learned those structures? So without further ado, it's time for an intervention, an odd meter intervention, in which Those of you who are unfamiliar with odd meters will become rapidly familiarized with them. And hopefully this leaves an impression. So we're going to play one of my favorite old pieces, which is not actually a klezmer piece. It's from the Romanian folk music tradition. It's in 7/8, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you everyone for coming.
It's Dr. Jonathan Cannon.
I start right. Yeah.
How are you gonna count us? up for Abigale Reisman on the violin. Dr. Jonathan Cannon on the violin and the neuroscience. Kirsten Lamb on bass and vocals. Pete Fanelli on the trombone. My name is Nat Seelen, playing clarinet for you tonight. Put your hands together for Peter and Kiran, making it look so beautiful on the video.
Thank you.
Keep clapping. It's for Peter and Kiran. They're making us look good. For Susan, Michael, and everyone here at the Synagogue for having us, thank you all so much. We have got one more piece for you, and then, because John's been talking so much about how relevant movement is to music, we're going to do some dance music for you after that, and we'll tell you what to do. We'll clear the chairs out. But we just want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. This has been such a blast. And now we're going to give you a song all about saying goodbye.
I'm not near you. Hold on.
You have plenty of time.
Oh, that's true. Right. Go ahead. Should we say this is a premiere?
It was such
Yep.
a good setup. But here we go.
Yeah, this is also a premiere. We're going to try this one out on you. This is all about, this is two songs, a medley of two songs in Yiddish, tied together, all about saying goodbye, saying, wishing you lots of good blessings, good cheer. So it's very appropriate for tonight. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. This is a special concert for us as a band experimenting with new music, as well as joining with John. And here we go.
So actually, we wrote this song with this little bit in here where I could talk over it, but I said everything you need to hear. And so I'll stop talking. Here we
A gläser Lillichayam, ich stand in Nemmenheit, wenn siehst bei am zum dicken Tisch. A gläser Lillichayam, vor Freundschaft und Freund, bist du ständig nur munter sein und frisch. A gläser Lillichayam, für alt und jung von sich da, für jeder in Person, der von seinen Heinz mit uns sieht. A gläser Lillichayam, der Bäcker voll mit Wein, weil der Sohn sie doch ständig mit uns sein. Gläser Lillichayam, trinket mir a Zin, nur auf sich ist bei jeder in von ein. A gläser Lillichayam, vor Mutter und vor Kind, als bis nachher die Mama soll sein rein. A gläser Lillichayam, der Abschied soll von Eiti schein, vom Deutscher Tag leben, der Mischwoche soll nicht sein. A gläser Lillichayam, ist euch dringend gedei, wenn ihr singt, wird es nein auf das Nein. A gläser Lillichayam, vor unser größten Land, über uns soll dem Himmel hellen Regen. A gläser Lillichayam, ich will schon noch so sein, mit der Schmeckel auf der Lippen sollt ihr gehen. A gläser Lillichayam, begleitet uns auf den Stein, mit Leibliche und Nauente und sein Himmel mit sein Tisch steht. A gläser Lillichayam, vor alles und du behält, weil du schon immer auf der ganzen Welt. Lo mir sich alle doch gesegnet, lo mir dich mit Maso broche, und wenn sich vergeht. So von der Mischwoche und wenn in Berlin sich begegnen, nicht fern keiner so von der Mischwoche.
Kirsten on vocals. Abigale Reisman on the violin. Pete Fanelli on the trombone, John Cannon on the violin and the neuroscience. My name is Nat, and oh my gosh, there is lightning right on top of us. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take 5 minutes to reset the room, and then we're gonna do a short dance set for you so that you can dance along with it. So we're gonna ask you to do 2 things. One, when the lights go on, stand up, stretch, smile, and then take your chair and just move it to the edge of the room so that we have space for dancing, okay? And we'll take 5 minutes and we'll do this. Good point. We're gonna leave the chairs on this section so we don't run into the camera. So it's these chairs over here that we're gonna move, and then go right over to the edge. And then after that, there's food and drink set up in the back, and we'd love it if you would join us. Just hang out a little bit, grab something to eat, grab something to drink, drop some money in the donations bin, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
That was crazy.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
All right, friends. We're going to play some Bulgars now. Some of you, in fact, many of you know how to dance to the Bulgar, and we're just going to look to you to enjoy and get started. That's all. Here we go. and do stick around afterwards, too. There you go. You know, ask one of the Synagogue people. They probably have one there. And if not, just... Sounds good. 1, 2,
What key?
D.
Okay.
D for duh.
Thank you so much, everyone. Please stick around, hang out, have a great time. Try not to get too wet going home.